So, Chris, would you mind sharing about your system of martial art?
Okay. What I do is it's based on Israeli Krav Maga, and it's a fusion with another Israeli system called Haganah as well. So we generally abbreviate the two together and we call it Krav Haganah. Okay.
Yes.
When we're talking to people, they don't often know as much about the Haganah system, so we often just generalize it that it is a Krav Maga based system that we do. But we draw from both elements of the two different styles to create our own syllabus.
I see.
Okay.
Yes.
Within our syllabus, we have tried to make it as security aware as possible, so it would be very beneficial to people in a security role, but at the same time we also acknowledge that there's a lot of knife crime in Scotland, so we have a strong focus in our training on knife defences as well as other weapons too. As part of our syllabus, in the way we teach our classes, we try and cover three main elements in each class that we do. We do a grab or a chokehold or a strangulation breakaway. We do weapons defense.
I see.
And then we also do a kind of combative or striking element as well. So whether that's defending against somebody kicking us or hitting us, or actually learning how to strike or punch or kick correctly as well. So within one class, we cover at least three areas. So those topics will change with every lesson that we teach. But within one lesson, like say for example, on Monday evening, I run my main class. Then within that one class, we would cover a grab or a chokehold or a strangulation escape. A defense against a weapon attack or a weapon threat. So, it could be somebody standing with a knife, holding it threateningly, asking us for money, or somebody actually attacking us repeatedly in a nice pick grip type stab or something like that. Okay? And then in addition to that, we'd learn how to do proper striking, different elbow positions, maybe how to break somebody's ribs with a step off the angle strike. We as part of the Haganah system, we absorb the desire to create an opportunity to escape as much as possible. So we use something called an incapacitation move, where we try to incapacitate the attacker. So for example, if we've been able to break away from a grab or a chokehold, then what we might finish off with is incapacitating one of their limbs to stop them giving chase to us. So if we push the person away from us, then we might stand on their foot first of all, so as they fall backwards, their body weight twists and snaps their ankle when they fall backwards. Or we might stamp on the foot before we escape from them if they're lying on the ground. So there's elements of both Krav Maga and Haganah that we put into our syllabus for good reasons, and other elements that we maybe decided might be too complicated for some of our students to learn. We use a belt system, like the old the original kind of Israeli belt system, like judo and karate. But we don't wear belts. We just wear kind of training trousers and t-shirts, and all our awards are given in a certificate format. So we don't wear belts. One reason for that is we want to all feel the same. We want to visually look the same, so that no one person feels inferior to somebody else in the class. And we try to promote very much a group and team and family feel to classes. But the syllabus that we teach each night or each session can be taken from anywhere in our system. So we cover everything in one class, from beginner grades up to more advanced levels as well. Whereas in traditional styles, we might say that student can only learn up to their belt level. We say, let's show as much as we can, even to beginners, so that they have an opportunity to learn in a rotational system, so that over a period of time they've actually learned or been exposed to as much of the system as we can teach them. And then eventually we do gradings, which would be for their understanding level, their belt level requirements to that level. The reason we show as much as we can is that one of our students could walk out the door one evening and be attacked by somebody in a way that they haven't experienced yet in class. So we try to make our system as reality-based as possible. And even from a beginner coming in the door for the first time, they will start to experience not just beginner's techniques, but intermediate and advanced as well.
I see. Chris, can you tell about your history of martial arts? When did you start to training the martial arts, and how old were you?
Okay. Well, I'm 42 now, and I started when I was 12 years old. So that's 30 years experience in the martial arts.
Yeah.
In my younger years, I started off in judo, and I didn't really settle in judo for too long, but it gave me a good understanding of some groundwork, which I managed to carry through the rest of my martial arts training. I then went into karate, focused on that for many years, and eventually became a karate instructor. And then from there I managed to explore other martial arts as well, just similar to karate, like kickboxing and things like that, a bit of aikido and jiu-jitsu, but my main style at that time was still karate. Eventually I sort of felt that the traditional arts, as good as they were, and I don't mean to sound derogatory or unappreciative of the traditional arts, but I felt that unless a student was at a very high level in a traditional art, taking that out onto the street for street defence, it wasn't as practical. Okay, so beginners had, students in a traditional style would have to have a lot of experience before they became really good to apply that system in a street environment where they could adapt and change and things like that. So I started looking at more self-defense for the street environment, and I developed my own self-defense system based on what I thought worked and didn't work from my karate and exposure to the other styles like aikido and things like that, because I just thought sometimes that, spin kicks and things like that, they're not practical for the street, but to do something like that, yes, somebody like a brown belt or maybe a blue belt up to black can be really proficient at doing spin kicks and deliver them strongly and effectively in a street environment. But for somebody maybe in a kind of lower level, unless they've trained for a long time, they might not be as proficient or as good at delivering those kicks. So I thought, well, let's change my focus and look more at what works for people with very little experience, that they can learn quickly and they can learn and apply it in a reality-based situation, in a real life on the street assault or an attack. So based on that, I worked out some own principles in self-defense. I started just a self-defense class, and then eventually back in 2001 I discovered Krav Maga. And I contacted one of the Israeli grandmasters with an inquiry about starting lessons. And at that point in the UK there was only one class that I was aware of, but it was in London. So with me being in Scotland, up in the north of the UK, I had to make arrangements to travel down to London to first experience a live Krav Maga class, and that really took off from there. I fell in love with Krav Maga after that, and I thought, well, this actually matches exactly the principles that I've tried to develop my own ideas with for a self-defense class. And after that, it was just Krav Maga all the way really for me. And then also having exposure to Haganah as well. Everything just seemed to fall into place for my style of training.
So, Chris, how can you came from the karate and Krav Maga to the self-defense and the bodyguard profession?
Okay, the martial arts that I was doing gave me a better understanding of the necessity for close protection, not just of myself but for others as well. And I began to understand more of how things might happen, how attacks would happen out with a dojo situation. I became more aware of the street environment for unpredictable attacks, how the environment could change, how people could change when there were no rules to define a fight. Okay, so again, to use the traditional styles as a reference, they're bound by rules to a certain degree and in a controlled environment for training purposes. And even from a sporting point of view, it's bound by rules. So considering the self-defense for the street as a kind of a change of environment and a change of rules where there are no rules a lot of the time. I found that in some of the security work that I was doing, that I was experiencing this as well. Before I got into work as a bodyguard, I worked as a doorman, like a bouncer. And within that job, I found that I was often the focus of many attacks because I represented an authority and the yes or no answer to somebody being allowed into a pub or a club and things like that. So I would attract a lot of anger and hatred from customers, especially if I'd asked them to leave or blocked them coming in. So I often found myself being in a position of aggressive behaviour towards me, physical attacks, some weapon attacks.
What kind of weapon?
Some knives, some sticks.
I see.
A lot of the time they were more threats, but we were still holding them, and the danger element was still there. There were some attacks, but a lot of them were threats. Group threats as well, so people arriving in a group, and the threat escalating from one potential attacker to suddenly many attackers. So transferring that across to a close protection and bodyguard situation, I had to be aware of the same sort of things, but in a position where I'm looking after the welfare of another individual or individuals, more than one person. For example, I recently worked with, it was just last year, I worked with the British tennis team for a big tennis tournament that goes around the world, called the Davis Cup. And I was one of the bodyguards involved in looking after the British team. And within the British team, there were a few big name players who needed a bit of extra care and attention. And in the environment of a big tennis match, especially the Davis Cup, which is very different to things like the Wimbledon tennis matches, if you've heard of that, where that's very formal and very reserved at times. The Davis Cup, it's like it's a cross between a tennis match and a rock concert, because the energy levels of the crowd is really high.
Yeah.
So all the bodyguards there had to stay very switched on. You know, there was no kind of calm time during the crowds, really. So we were constantly on the ball, switched on, checking all the crowds and things in case somebody tried to rush onto the courts, or we had to evacuate and things as well. So you're suddenly being aware of how to protect not just yourself, but more than one person at the same time in the team environment.
Yes.
And then going from court to locker room and changing rooms with individuals as well. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. It's very interesting theme because the martial arts, it's just the martial arts, it's training and a lot. But when we have the bodyguards and the real fights, real things, it's a little bit different that other people are training, because you need be more effectively than other guys, and so it's more interesting that all over the places of martial art, So you need be the effective.
Yeah. You need to have a level of confidence in your own abilities that gives your client confidence in your abilities as well.
Of course.
But not from a sense of bravado, not making out to be the big strong man, and I think there's a lot of misconception in the close protection world that people assume that bodyguards have to be big, strong, burly, hard men. But a lot of the best bodyguards that I know are not big, strong men. They're the kind of men that blend in very well. And these are the kind of people that are very effective because they can essentially hide in their role and become what we call the grey man, where they're not noticed as much. So they could pretend to be somebody's personal aide and still function in the bodyguard task. They could be in an overwatch role where they're not directly protecting somebody, but they're in a surveillance role and relaying information to somebody else in the bodyguard team. But they have to do that in a way where they're subtle and that they don't stand out. So there's different applications in that role.
Yeah, of course.
Yep.
Can you say about as you're teaching, do you have some methodology of training of the work against the knife in the self-defense?
Yes, we do. As I mentioned earlier, every class we do a weapons defense, where it be knives, sticks, bats, or guns. And we put a lot of emphasis into knife work because in Scotland there has been high knife crime, especially in a lot of gang-related situations. Now, not every area in Scotland has this situation. I'm not saying Scotland's a bad place for knife crime, but knives are more popular than sticks, bats, and guns, for example. So a lot of people involved in crime, for example, might also carry a knife as well, whether it be to threaten with as a visual threat or to physically attack somebody as well. So we believe knife defences or knife training is very, very important. One of the methods that we use for training is we train to defend against street attacks. Okay, so attacks coming straight to us on a line of attack, and then also off-angle attacks from the outside edges. Okay,
yes.
So if we could imagine a circle round about us of 360 degrees, a circular reference, and then we could think that a knife attack from the outside could come in on any one of these angles from the outside. Then we would train in what we call our 360 defences, 360 degree defences. So train to block or counter attack attacks coming in from all these different angles. Okay, so if it's coming in from directly vertical above us, then we train to defend against that. Or if it comes in from a side angle of say 45 degrees, or maybe a 90 degree angle, or even and again we can incorporate the clock face as well. So we could say maybe 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, try to think which side would be the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock on the way this picture's turned round. But so we train for different angles of attack. To make reference to the traditional arts again, we maybe have what we call, they used to call one-step sparring, where one person would attack and then the other person would block and then defend. We try to block and counter-attack at the same time. So a simultaneous block and counter-strike to then take the attack back to the attacker and overwhelm them. Okay. We also train in what's called a recurring attacker. So when we train with knives, we don't just have one person stabbing once or attacking once. We train that they try and stab the student multiple times. So that the student has to learn to deal with that as quick as possible for their own safety, to get into a point where they can control the knife and control the attacker before they deliver their strikes to take them down.
I see. Do you train some? Do you have some methodology about the psychology of the work against the knife? It's not so simple,
With every attacker, there is a different way of attack. So to always train that one attacker will always attack you in the same way is wrong. So you have to be able to train to understand that there's maybe a difference between a knife threat and a knife attack. It could be a knife threat from the front, so somebody standing with a knife out to the front, like this, or somebody with a knife behind you. Like, so say for example, you're using a cash machine, an ATM, to withdraw money, and somebody might come up behind you and put the knife to your back. So you can't actually see necessarily the hand with a knife, but you still have to train to be prepared that it could be a knife and deal with it in that manner. So I think the training that you do against a knife has to build confidence that you can consistently overcome the fear of that threat or that attack, and not just recoil in fear and suffer the attack, but to actually adopt a survival attitude. So psychologically, the attitude would be to keep going and to keep going and to keep fighting to survive. And also to accept that in every knife or weapon attack, there's a very high chance that, as good as your defense may be, you may still get hurt. And I think it's wrong to assume that no matter how good you are at martial arts or self-defense, that you will always be immune to an attack. You will always overcome that attack. You have to accept to an extent that sometimes you will get hurt. You might get cut. And it's how you deal with getting past that fear and just accept it that it may happen, to then move on in your defences to survive the attack as well.
I see. Can you ask? Can you answer the question about what's difference between the other systems and your system? Why it makes what makes it better than another?
I'm going to generalize a little bit. Okay. I'm going to focus more on saying Krav Maga rather than the specifics of what I teach.
Okay.
I can't say. I think for me to say that my style or my art is better than anybody else's would not be very humble of me to do that. Okay, I would become arrogant, and I don't want to come across that way. Because everybody's entitled to their own opinions and things like that. However, I think Krav Maga as an art, or as a combat style, is one of the most effective systems in the world, because it allows us to adapt quickly to unexpected situations. It gives us an opportunity to understand our environment and how things change better than other styles that are maybe more traditional focused. And it's a reality-based system. It allows us to experience as close as possible, based on our training, to a real situation. And although that comes down to the individual instructor that teaches and how they teach, I believe in the way that I teach my Krav Maga and my Haganah, or a combination of the two, if you like, in Krav Haganah, through my club, the Combat Evolved Academy of Self-Defense. I believe that I have to teach my students as close to reality as I can, so that they are better prepared for the real world. So we often train in a way that puts our students at a disadvantage. So a few weeks ago, for example, I made them train as if their main striking arm was injured, so that they weren't able to use their strong arm at all, their best fighting side, for example. So if somebody's right-handed, they had to rely on their left hand more for doing most of their defences and counter strikes, which forced them to then understand that even if their good arm was injured and they couldn't use it, they had to still continue to fight as best as they could with their left side. We'll maybe put them in positions where they're trapped in a corner, and there's maybe one or two attackers attacking them at the same time. So they're having to deal with multiple attackers, and also trapped in a corner where their angles of escape have changed or are very limited. Or we'll go from our training hall into a corridor, which is narrow and tight, and we fill it with people. And they have to get from one end of that corridor to the other whilst being attacked in that corridor, so that it becomes more of a group attack environment on an individual, almost like a kind of run the gauntlet sort of really. There's other elements to our training that we do that we believe it puts our students in a better understanding and a better position to be as ready as they can be for things happening outside our class. And I believe that Krav Maga gives us the tools to do that. Obviously there will be other martial arts styles or combative styles that do a very similar job. But for me, that's the reason I chose Krav Maga, because to me it is more realistic than many other systems. Obviously, there's other systems that are very similar to Krav Maga, like SEALAT or Sistema as well, the Russian system. You know, and although Sistemas come from a mainly military background, Krav Maga came from a mainly military background as well. So their adaptive capabilities in dealing with weapon strikes or weapon attacks or threats is very, very effective. You know, and I think when we train regularly with things like knives, it gives us a confidence level above a lot of other systems that are controlled by rules. Whereas when we train in a system that has very limited rules, other than just in a controlled, you know, from a safety point of view, but still learning a reality-based attack response, then it puts us in a better position for survival.
I see. You said that in Scotland it's a lot of gangs, and it's much accidents with the knives. It's true?
Yeah, in Scotland we have a very strong football, soccer type following, right? Big teams in Scotland. And unfortunately, these big teams are also on either side of the religious border as well. So one side will generally support one team, and one other religious group will support another team. Although it's not as simple as that, the two big Scottish teams and some of the other teams as well, they also have you know, gangs, or not so much gangs, but you know, groups of you know, soccer gangs who will maybe cause trouble, but they do it in a group crowd, and many of these people will carry a knife as well. Sometimes these groups are not necessarily related to football. They could just be a bad crowd of people.
I see.
You know, we have a lot of teenage gangs as well that hang around the streets at night and even during the day. And sometimes these groups of crowds, you know, they can just be bored teenagers looking for trouble, just to just busy or active and have a bit of fun. And one of them might carry a knife because they want to be the big, strong, hard man in the group, you know, just to give them a bit of confidence, a bit of bravado amongst their friends or their peers. One thing I teach my students is that whether somebody intends to use a knife or not, when the person threatening them or attacking them holds that knife gives them psychological strength. Whether they intend to use it or not, it gives them a bit more confidence because they see this tool, this knife, as a tool of power. It gives off a powerful threat. Excuse me.
Yes, I see. When we have some guy with a knife, and when we take it off, take the knife off, mostly he just run away. If we have his knife.
Sometimes when you disarm somebody, it depends on what their intention is and how committed they are to following that through. If somebody, for example, is desperate for whatever reason to take your money, and they threaten you with a knife, and we disarm them, but they're still desperate for your money, they still want to rob you or attack you, then they may try and get that knife back. or the dynamics of the fight or the attack might change. It might change from a knife threat to a knife attack to then hands and fists and elbows, or grappling, and then end up on the ground. And I think a statistic that I read said that about 70 to 80% of street attacks end up on the ground. Okay, so quite often, if somebody is really intent on taking your money, then that knife attack or that initial threat might change to another type of attack. And I mentioned earlier, we do something called the recurring attacker drill, where we often stab repeatedly. But we also train the three different types of attack that we cover in one class, between a grab or choke, and a weapon attack, or a striking, whatever. We put the three attacks that we've learned in the one night together. So we learn them one at a time. So we'll say we learn like a low knife attack to the stomach. We learn a rear chokehold attack, where somebody puts their arm around your neck and pulls you back. Or we might learn how to defend against a swing punch, a haymaker, a swing punch or hook punch.
Yes.
And then we put them all together, so the one person will attack in three random ways. So they might attack first with a knife. The defender removes the knife, but that person will come back again attacking in another way, where they'll maybe grab them in the rear chokehold, and the defender needs to break away from that. And then suddenly that attacker will come back again with a swinging punch, and the defender needs to defend against that. So we need to remember that defending against one attack, it might not end there. It might move on to another type of attack. Or striking somebody so that they fall down away from us. That might not be the end of the attack. The person might have the intent to continue fighting so much that they get up off the ground and chase us. So we can't necessarily just turn and walk away or turn and start to run without making sure that the attacker that we have just incapacitated or put to the ground or pushed away from us or stopped attacking us, are they still going to come back again? Are they going to repeat the attack? Are they going to try and attack us again? Is the attack going to change? So
I see. The next question: the most of the professionals say the most desired thing in a life and death situation is to run away. What is your opinion on this case?
Well, as I just said there, I don't think it's right to just turn and run away. I think the most important thing to do is to try and avoid a fight situation.
I see.
But if we get caught up in a fight situation, our priority has to be to find a way to escape at the earliest convenience, at the earliest time, in a safe way to do so. And we use a few principles that we call our 3 golden rules, and the first one is basically always, if you cannot avoid fighting, or having to defend yourself, you have to always be aware of your environment to look for the nearest, safest exit. Or your intention is not to stand and fight for as long as you can, but to find a way to escape from that. And that's why we use things like incapacitation moves to allow us to create an opportunity to escape safely. If we're defending ourselves and having to fight back, then we fight to we train to defend ourselves, to stop the level of threat against us, which is essentially the law in the United Kingdom. We're only allowed to use self-defense to the point where we stop the level of threat against us. So the level of force that we use has got to be proportional against the threat against us. Yeah. So we can't jump up and down on somebody's head when they're on the ground, because that would be called excessive force.
Yeah.
But if somebody attacks us with a knife, for example, then our life is in serious danger, so we're allowed to react accordingly in a means that we can defend ourselves to stop that level of threat against us. And in our cases, what we would do to train with is to subdue the attacker and disarm them, and then prevent them from chasing after us, so that we could safely then run away, or safely walk away, to then get to a safe distance to allow us to run away. When we've finished dealing with an attacker, we don't just turn our back on the attacker. We use our eyes to keep an eye on the attacker, to know what their intention is doing after we've finished fighting. So if we, for example, we push somebody away and we say, get back, stay back, and speak verbally strongly, and gesture with our hands in a manner that prevents the fight from happening, then that's good. But I don't just turn my back on the attacker in case he suddenly attacks.
Yeah, if you can throw you.
Yeah.
Back.
If I repel the attacker and get them away through striking, elbows, knees, and I knock them to the ground, I don't assume that the fight is over, because that person might get up again. So I back off, keeping my eye on the attacker with my hands up, with my guard up. And I would command them and say, don't chase me again, stay there, get back, stay back. And if they make an action to get up off the ground to continue fighting, then I would go in again and deal with that.
I see.
Before knowing it is safe to go away. I only turn to go away when I know that the attacker is not going to come at me anymore.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's something we teach our students over and over and over again. Yeah. If we fall to the ground and we try to get up quickly so that we're not jumped on or anything like that, when we get up off the ground, our guard automatically comes up and we're looking at the person that has just been in our conflict with us. We don't turn our back on that person as we get up off the ground. We don't roll away from the person and turn our back to them on the ground. We get up from the ground in a controlled manner so that we still know where they are. And we also check over our shoulders to see if there's another attacker, and also to check the environment around us in case we have changed place during the fight, whether there's objects or obstacles, things we might fall over or hurt ourselves on. We check around us before we turn and run as well.
I see.